Hello everyone, what's going on? I'm Gareth, the Master974, back again today, and welcome to another Valve source code tutorial follow-up video. And today I'm going to be following up on the Ironsights tutorial that I did a while back by going over some improvements, issues, and other considerations. So let's just get right into the video without wasting too much time on the intro. Now the first thing I'm going to get to is a better implementation of the consideration for Ironsights, if you will, which comes courtesy and thanks to Mazdo. Now, they left a pretty lengthy comment, so I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to show all of it, not without having to scroll through the comment in the actual video itself. But what they did was outlined a guide about how to add a better check to see which weapons should have Ironsights enabled or not. Now, we'll be modifying that guide slightly for the purposes of this video. And I also need to give Mazdo a thank you as well for leaving a completely separate comment, leaving some ideal key values for the right, up, forward and FOV for the various weapons that you can have Ironsights for, such as the pistol, the 357, the SMG1, the AR2, and even the crossbow if it has a dynamic scope on it. So let's get into the guide. So what you want to do is go to your games or everything solution, usual stuff, go to weaponpass.h, and inside of the file weaponinfo_t class, we have kind of got the name of it there for a second, but near the bottom, it doesn't really matter where it goes, but you want to add ball b can use Ironsight, and then you want to go to weaponpass.cpp, and then you want to go down to the pass function, which is this. And then in this function at the bottom near here, we actually define a key values called *p sights, which is basically this Ironsight key that needs to be defined in the weapon script. So what you want to add inside of the if p sights if statement is b can use Ironsight equals p sights arrow get ball of, and then in speech marks enabled, and then false, which means that the enabled word needs to be in the weapon script, and you can give it a value of 0 for no Ironsights, 1 for you can use Ironsights. And then in the else statement, just set b can use Ironsight to false. So if this Ironsight key value isn't defined in the weapon script, then by default it's not allowed to use Ironsights. Then the next thing you want to do is go to base combat weapon shared.h. And in this file, close to where the Ironsights stuff is added, you want to add ball can use Ironsights passing through void inputs, but with the const keyword after it. And you want to remove the virtual ball has Ironsights line, which already exists, because this is no longer needed because you've got this better way of checking to see if weapons can use Ironsights or not. And then what you want to do is go to base combat weapon shared.cpp. And again, close to where the Ironsights stuff is defined. Now what you want to add is ball C base combat weapon : can use Ironsights passing through void inputs with the const keyword after it, and make it return get weapon data dot b can use Ironsights, as you can see here. Now when you do this, there's going to be some errors because stuff like the toggle Ironsights, enable Ironsights, and disable Ironsights functions are going to have errors because they would use has Ironsights instead of can use Ironsights. So pretty much every instance where there's an error with has Ironsights, just replace it with can use Ironsights instead. So as you can see, I'm just highlighting the relevant pieces of code that you'd want to change. Okay, and at this point, I'm just going to go over what you would need to do to add Ironsights to a weapon. So essentially, you should have a section like this, Ironsight, with the capital I and the capital S, then the curly brackets, and then at the top, you want in speech marks enabled, and in a separate set of speech marks 1. This would mean that Ironsights are enabled, and these are the settings that are going to be used for the 357, for example. Now this isn't 100% complete yet because there's one more section of the code that we need to modify, but I do need to give a little bit of a thank you and shout out to Holmes Sludge for leaving a comment talking about trying to get the crossbow to have Ironsights, but instead of using the key binding like what I outlined in the original tutorial, they wanted to know how to use the SecondaryAttack function instead. So what I'm going to be showing is how you can make it happen, but I'm not going to be modifying the crossbow code because I don't really need to. But I will be modifying the 357 and the pistol code for my Valve source code tutorials GitHub page, so you have an idea of what you can do to make that work. So next you want to go to the cc toggle Ironsights function, and it's worth noting as well that for stuff that is shared between the server and client, you can actually click on where it says server HL2 here, and click on client HL2, and stuff that is on the client actually shows up and is valid. But you want to change this if statement to be like this instead. So you still want to have if p player arrow get active weapon and then exclamation mark f class name is of p player arrow get active weapon, and then in speech marks the weapon that you want to have Ironsight enabled for, but using the secondary attack function instead. So as I said, I'm doing this for the 357 and the pistol. So that is what you'd want to do here. So you still have this section. It's just that we're checking to see which weapons should have Ironsights but not use the keybind. So for example, if this is the SMG1 or the shotgun, then this code will get triggered down here, which means use Ironsight because the secondary attack is already used up by something else. And so to add something like this secondary attack to something like the 357, it's fairly easy. You want to go to weapon357.cpp. In the class declaration for C weapon 357, you want to add void secondary attack, passing through void inputs. And somewhere in the code, I decided to add it at the very bottom. Add void C weapon 357 : secondary attack, passing through void inputs. And in this function, you just want to do toggle Ironsights, and then m_fl next secondary attack equals gp globals arrow cur time plus, and then some delay. I choose 1.5 seconds, because if you don't have this line, then what you'll see is that the 357 will constantly go into and out of Ironsight every single frame, which is not something that you want. So by adding this line, there should be a delay between when you can exit and enter Ironsight. And so on that note, I actually noticed that even with the basic implementation for the Ironsights, that you can basically spam the keybind, whatever button you choose to have Ironsights for, and it just enters and exits constantly without a delay. So if you want to add a delay, then what you want to do is go back to base combat weapon shared.cpp, and you want to go to the toggle Ironsights function. And inside of this if exclamation mark can use Ironsight if statements, you want to append it to add or 2 vertical lines. GP globals arrow cur time is lower than m_fl Ironsighted time plus a delay. I choose 1.5 seconds again. So essentially what we're doing is we're only going to be toggling the Ironsight state if the weapon can use Ironsight, or if the current time is greater than whatever the Ironsighted time was, plus some sort of arbitrary delay. So now you can spam the keybind and notice that you can only enter or exit Ironsight every 1.5 seconds. Now let's get onto the issue that was brought to my attention. Now I do need to give a thank you to TauGuyUT, and I think even Mazdo pointed this out to me in DMs as well. But what happens is if you go through a level transition with Ironsight active, then when the level transition completes and the next level loads, the view model will actually disappear, but it would reappear if you actually use the Ironsight toggle keybind. And so, yeah, that's not good. You don't want that to happen. Now, I honestly don't remember if someone actually sent me the code I'm about to outline, or if this is something I came up with myself. So if you remember sending this to me, then please let me know, because I want to give credit where credit's due. But if no one comes forward, then I guess I have to say that I came up with this code by myself. So what you want to do is go to base combat weapon shared.h, and inside of a hashtag ifndef client DLL if statement, you want to add void on restore, passing through void inputs. And I'll have to show a little screenshot of the script that I wrote for this, because I was actually thinking of needing to use the onSave function as well. But as it turns out, the function that I wrote out for that pretty much does nothing useful, so it's not really needed. But with that, you want to go back to base combat weapon shared.cpp, and you want to add inside of a hashtag ifndef client DLL if statement, as you can see here. So I'll switch back to the server so it's actually defined and you can see it properly. You want to add void c base combat weapon : on restore, passing through void inputs. And in this function, you want to do base class : on restore. Then if m_b is ironsighted, then m_b is ironsighted equals false. Then enable ironsights, else disable ironsights. So pretty much what we're doing here is once the level transition completes or the game's loaded up or whatever the case is, then if we're in ironsighted mode, then we disable the ironsighted boolean and then enable ironsights afterwards. So what this should do is every time you go through a level transition, if you're in ironsighted mode, then the weapon should look like it is entering the ironsight state again. Now, you can say this is a bit of an issue, and in a way it is, but at least this temporary hacky kind of fix is better than the disappearing view model issue that exists before this. So I think this is just a bit of a better solution to this problem, but I think through testing, I don't know if I'm going to be able to replicate it in the video, but I think I did encounter an issue where the view model still disappeared even with this. So you just have to be careful with this. I'm not 100% convinced that this issue is fully resolved. And this leads me on to a comment that was left by, as far as I can tell, a blank username. So thanks for the comment, whoever you are. That what they said is that the method that I outlined in the original tutorial was not practical and has visual issues, which is something that I agree with. And a better way to implement Ironsight is to actually have animation data in the model files, in the .mdl files, to have stuff like the Ironsight enter, Ironsight exit, Ironsight hold, and Ironsight fire animations, rather than doing what we're doing in this follow-up tutorial and the previous tutorial, which was to physically move the view model via the code. Now, the downside is I don't actually have the knowledge or expertise to actually create this animation data for stuff like the pistol or the 357 or the shotgun to show you how you can create a tutorial in that situation where stuff like Ironsights is handled via models rather than physically moving the view models in the code. So if someone out there knows how to make that happen and would be kind enough to send me these modified model files, that way I could potentially in 2026 do an alternative tutorial where I outline how you could enable Ironsights for weapons if you have Ironsight activities and sequences in the view models in the first place. Now, this could help an issue that was described by Dr. No, or Dr. N0 I think I should say, who said that when they was testing this for a Source 2013 multiplayer mod, that whenever they entered Ironsights the game crashed. I honestly don't know why this happens, and it's not like I have a setup on my end that I can use to test this out, because I test pretty much on a single player server and everything worked okay, so don't know why this happens, or rather why the game crashes in Source 2013 multiplayer mods, but I think with this alternative tutorial idea, that could potentially help stop that game crash from happening. But I don't know though, we'll have to see. And so the last thing I'm going to get to in this video is a suggestion courtesy of Kayama0811, thanks for the comment, who wanted to know if it was possible to stop the player from sprinting when in Ironsighted mode, and even how to slow the player down when they're in Ironsight mode. So here's what you can do to make that possible. So what you want to do in base combat weapons shared.cpp near the top of the file is you want to add inside of a hashtag if ndef client DLL if statements, or if you're using my Valve source code tutorials, then just add hashtag else, hashtag include hl2player.h as you see here. And with that, you want to go to the enable Ironsights function, and towards the end of it, you want to add the following. So what you want to do is add inside of a hashtag if ndef of client DLL, you want to create a convar ref ironsighted speed, in speech marks hl2 underscore walk speed. What this is saying is find a convar called hl2 walk speed. Then if that is found, then do powner arrow set max speed of ironsighted speed.getFloat. Then create a chl2 player called *p player, which is inside the brackets chl2 player asterisk of to base player powner. So to base player powner creates a pointer to a C-base player, but we're typecasting that to a chl2 player. The reason for this is because we're going to create an if statement, if p player, then p player arrow enable sprint of false. That way, the player's sprint functionality gets disabled once Ironsights is entered. So that's what's going on there. Then in the disable Ironsights function, you want to do something pretty similar. Again, inside of a hashtag if_endef of client_DLL if statement, you actually want to create two convar refs, one called walk speed, which is inside of speech marks hl2_walk speed, and a second one called norm speed, which is inside speech marks hl2_norm speed. And this time in the powner arrow set max speed line, we're going to do this. So you want to do powner arrow is suitor crypt question mark norm speed.getFloat colon walk speed.getFloat. So what this effectively says is if the player has the suit, then set the max speed to be this norm speed, whatever float point value is associated with that. Otherwise, if the player does not have the suit, then set the max speed to the walk speed float value. Now, if you want to know what these values are, they're defined in hl2player.cpp. And if you go to the top of the file here, you can see that walk speed is defined as 150 and norm speed is defined as 190. Even in a Source 2013 multiplayer perspective, that is what the speed values are set to. So essentially it's a bit confusing because you got walk and norm and it can be a bit confusing between the two. But what you're doing is checking to see if the player has the suit and setting the maximum speed to the appropriate value. Now, the main reason I decided to do it this way is for situations where you might want to have the player have a weapon that can use Ironsights, but they don't actually have the suit yet. Again, that's if you want to do that. There's a bit of a consideration. And one thing you'll note, if you don't have the suit, then this walk speed will be the same regardless of whether you have Ironsights enabled or not, because it uses the walk speed number, which is 150. So the player won't actually slow down if the player doesn't have a suit but uses Ironsights. But the speed drop should be noticeable if the player does use the suit and uses a weapon with Ironsights. Then you want to do the same CHL2 player *p player line, just create a pointer to the Half-Life 2 player, and then if that player is valid, then do p player arrow enable sprint of true. That way, once Ironsights are disabled, the sprint functionality is returned to the player. And so yeah, with that being said and done, that is everything I need to say in this follow-up video. I know I screwed up with the audio commentary, as I always do, especially towards the end, because I just want to get this over with at this point. So yeah, that's a better Ironsights consideration functionality added, courtesy of Mazdo. That's how you can fix, hopefully, a view model disappearing issue, and how you can slow the player down when they use Ironsights and stop them from sprinting. So let me know what you think about the video. Hopefully the next Valve source code tutorial follow-up video isn't going to be released massively after the upload date of this video, and it's not going to be as long because I really don't have that much to say, although it does open up the possibility of doing a completely separate video, but you'll know more about it when that video happens. But for now though, I'll leave you with what I've talked about here. If there's anything that's still problematic or I forgot to talk about, or there's still issues with this, then you can let me know in the comments section down below. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. Take care there. Peace out. See you later. And see you for whatever I decide to do next.